Inga, thanks very much for making time to talk to me. It's, as always, a pleasure. I'm talking now with Inga Hubricks, who is the Global Sustainable and Security Senior Executive for Radisson's Hotels. It's the most extraordinary job title, and yet you don't seem to be aging with it at all. It's a massive burden to be carrying all that. But I wanted today to focus less on security, which at the moment seems to be less of an issue, and rather more on the sustainability agenda. And I know that there's been some exciting things happening at Radisson. I think it's 18 months since you and I last had one of these interviews. And I just wondered what's changed in that 18 months from your perspective.
Well, thank you, Harold. It's really great to have another conversation. Always a pleasure. I think, in the last 18 months when we last spoke, we were still smack in the middle of the pandemic and trying to get to grips with what does this mean? How do we need to respond? It was still in a crisis response, and we found a good response with what we call the Radisson Hotel Safety Protocol, so that is validated and it's rolled out everywhere. But as you can see in the way I speak about it now, is that this has become a normal process. So we're in year 2 and hotels know what to do and everybody's kind of used to this. So this crisis mode has gone away. But I think one of the things that has not gone away, not even in the height of the crisis, when of course we had much fewer guests, but still those guests were complaining to us, for example, about single wrapped items in plastic, which I was surprised and pleased to see. Surprised, of course, because you think, well, if we're getting these comments now, surely everybody knows that it's for their own good and for health and safety and that it's temporary, but also positively surprised because you think, hey, people really get the message that we shouldn't be doing this. So I think the sustainability has never gone away, but now it is back in full force. And of course, now we're in the run-up to COP26. It's on the agenda, it's there, it's on the forefront, but it is also on the forefront in a much more professional way. And we see the requirements and the requests really coming from all the stakeholders in our value chain. So that to me is the big change. And it's positive. I like it. It's very good.
Do you think that one of the things that's occurred to me about the COVID pandemic and the crisis is that, in a sense, trust came back center stage, didn't it? When I think back to my parents and when they were traveling, one of the big issues was whether when they got there the hotel would have been built. And we kind of got past that, and then there was the fear about whether the room would actually be clean, and we're past that now. People very rarely turn up at the hotel and find that the room isn't clean and well looked after. But COVID kind of heightened the trust issue, I think, in people's minds. Were they going to be secure if they stayed there? And that, of course, really brings you to the responsibility agenda, doesn't it? The sense that the consumer wants you to take responsibility for ensuring their safety in your premises. And I wonder if that's brought quite a major change in consumer perspectives.
Well, I think first of all, you always have the duty of care for your staff and for the guests in your care. So that was there before, but of course, yes, people are much more aware of what that means. If you can travel somewhere and something can happen that puts you in an uncertain situation, you need to know that the hotel is trained and ready to help you, because you may be in a place that you're not used to be at, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to know that the hotel is ready to help you in that situation. And I think that is a realization that people, because it was about their own health and in some cases their family's health, that they were thinking about this. And also because there was an overflow of information. So they turned to the hotel to be the expert, to be the trained, informed expert who can help. And I think, with the safety protocols that we put out, but other groups did the similar thing with safety protocols to say, this is what we do to prevent. But you also need to say, this is what you do, or this is what we will do, and inform the guests about what we will do. Should something go wrong, we can help you get tested through our trusted testing partners. We know about the information. Here's we put a link on our website which gives information, which connects every destination with every other destination in terms of information. And that is what we have been focusing on training our staff and making sure that the staff also has those answers. Having a good crisis management protocol in place also helps. But the point is, we had to become experts on new things that nobody was an expert on in the beginning. But the underpinning principle of duty of care was always there. And now, if I may take that to the sustainability field or to the responsible tourism field, I think what would be great is if we can create that same trust on responsible tourism or responsible hotels. Because what we have been speaking about before, and what I really believe is that today it's very confusing for a traveler to know what a sustainable hotel means. And it's very hard for some hotels to get started on that journey. So if we can, take that idea of trust on, yes, you're going to be cared for, you're going to be in an environment that provides the right prevention for COVID and that can help you when you're in a crisis. If you then transpire that to sustainability, if we can find a way to say, this is what true entry-level sustainability looks like, or more advanced sustainability look like, but not with all different names and all different frameworks and 20 different things where you need to be an expert. And even as an expert, you sometimes don't know what actually the labels or the things mean. Then we can use that to build trust and to drive green choices. Because today we're not good enough at saying what that real sustainability or entry-level sustainability is at a hotel level. And we're not telling the story to the guest enough, I think. And that's something we also share as an idea.
Listening to this now, what strikes me, Inge, is that what happened with COVID is that people looked for someone that they trusted to give them reliable information. And the person who's going to book a Radisson hotel is going to book a Radisson hotel because to some extent they have an established relationship with you. If they know something about Radisson, that's why they've chosen you. And that they have a relationship where they feel you won't let them down because you're Radisson, but also know that if you did, they would be able to write to somebody and get recompense for the fact that Radisson didn't deliver what it said it would deliver. So it's kind of trustworthy on both levels. They're based on both experience and the sense if something goes wrong and they complain, something will be done about it. Now, that seems to me to be at the heart of it. But the problem with the certificates is that no customer, even I, don't know what most of them mean, because I don't know what people got the points for. And the example I use all the time, and forgive me if I've done this one with you before, but in the context of the drought in Cape Town, you couldn't find out which hotels had the best track record on minimizing the use of water. You simply couldn't tell because the certificates don't permit you to know that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's the part, of course, I think we need two things. We need simple, transparent. We do need some kind of label or stamp as a recognition and a simple thing that everybody can do, access, and understand. Because it's not because we say we have the Radisson Responsible Business Program that people know what that means. They have to dig into our website or our sustainability report to find out what targets we have, how did we perform against those targets, and which hotels are the best practices. And similar for, like, you're right, if you say you have a green key label or you have an EarthCheck label, you need to dig into the details to understand what that really means. But if we are actually piloting, that's very interesting that you bring that up, because we're actually piloting how we can communicate in a simple way to guests about some essential things that we're doing on sustainability, but really only maximum 10, but probably less, 5 to 10, that will be represented in a kind of a form of an icon that we will bring to the guests in different steps of the guest experience. And we're piloting this because we're also in our quality score asking about recognition for responsible business, but usually people don't even know what that means, responsible business. So we're trying to figure out now if we can communicate the many things that hotels are doing in a simple way and in a way that is also engaging. So, for example, where we link our tower reuse to bringing money to safe drinking water projects. So if we can link that story in a good way, can we incite more guests to do that more? Or if we offer green housekeeping, same way, if we tell them why there's a benefit and to whom there's a benefit, but in a very simple way, can we incite them to do more? So we're actually, you made me think of that. We're actually doing that as a pilot, but I do think that we need, as an industry, there's too many labels. We need something simple in a non-competitive way. So we're not about this, group is better or faster than the others, but really something that can be accepted across the hotel groups, across the distribution channels, so that it is the same label or logo across, very simple and accessible, so we bring everybody along. So that's something that needs to happen. And I think you're right about the measurement too, because if you have even an entry level stamp or recognition, measurement needs to be part of that. Because if you don't measure, say, a carbon footprint, even if you're an independent small hotel, how are you ever going to get started on a journey that we all need to go to, which is net zero in the end? So measurement is part of even the most basic hotel sustainability framework or stamp, in my view, because if you don't measure it and we don't give them easy tools to measure, we will never get there.
No, I think that's absolutely right. The other dimension that seems to me to be important is that people know that some issues are more important in some places than others. So, if you're going to a dry country or one that's currently got a drought, you're going to worry about water. If you're going to go to a place that's got some pretty poor labor standards, you're probably going to worry about that. And I think we need to allow more variation in what matters to the consumer and the destination. The assumption that everything matters to the same extent everywhere in the world is simply obviously untrue. And in a way we devalue what we do when we pretend that that's the case, I think.
I agree, and we need to leave some flexibility also about what's possible. For example, I mean, we're very vocal inside our own group about phasing out the single-use plastic water bottles, but we're not there yet. Why? Because in some places it's simply way too expensive to buy a glass bottle, so it doesn't work, and certainly not for an industry which is still on its knees. We're getting up, but we're still on our knees. And simply because the water is not safe to drink. And if you do it with a dispenser, it's going to create too many hygienic issues, which we can't do or can't risk. So I'm with you. It's true. It's true that not everything matters in the same way everywhere. But what does matter everywhere is that we fight climate change and that we reduce our carbon footprints, for example. Everywhere.
I think on the precisely that point about hygiene and water, I mean, let's not debate whether it is possible or not, because there will be places where it isn't. But it seems to me we should treat our guests as adults, and if we really can't solve the problem, we need to explain why, because they're not stupid people, and we could make a great deal of progress by explaining why some things just can't be done in some places, and be honest with them and say, look, we haven't cracked this yet. We've got a better idea, please share it with us. And I think we need to kind of bring the guest on board in the same way that you would a guest who came into your home. And that's in a way what the hospitality industry aspires to, isn't it? It is to have that relationship with guests so that they will come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yes, bring the guests along, be transparent, and also the non-competitive aspect is key.
Yes.
Because in some destinations, and I speak a lot about Phu Quoc. I haven't got the solution yet, but I've been there a couple of years ago, and Phu Quoc is Vietnam and is a developing island, and tourism is developing, and it brings a lot of prosperity also, but it brings its own problems.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is waste. And the only way you can tackle it on an island like that is by cooperating across the value chain of tourism and travel in that destination with the local government. Now, in the same way, I think if someone found a solution, I remember in Kenya, even though waste recycling doesn't really exist, we found partners in our Nairobi hotel who could recycle through a social business. They could recycle more than 90% of the waste because they were doing it with a kind of a social enterprise locally, and it was this specific company that was set up to do this. And if we have that best practice and we can share that best practice, for example, on a platform like the one you are creating, that it's really a non-competitive thing. It's not because we have that no one should have that partner. No, it's we have it. Please use the same partner so that we can grow that business and that we can make better in a certain destination. And I think that is, for me, one of the essential things of sustainability. It is non-competitive. What is competitive is the way we bring maybe value propositions on sustainability to the guests, like we have our 100% carbon neutral meetings. I mean, that's competitive because it's part of our value proposition. But the way we do the fundamentals is absolutely 100% non-competitive.
And actually cheaper to do in the destination if a number of hotels are doing it. And clearly an osmosis plant constructed that benefits the community and the hotels, a reverse osmosis plant, which I don't think's happened yet. But when that happens, that will make a really big difference. The waste recycling, the use of food waste, all of these things are more easily done. Even a big hotel struggles to do that on their own. But a group of hotels doing it together can have a really big impact and create lots of employment. One of the disappointing things for me about the awards this year, particularly the plastics category, is that we didn't get very many applications from people who are effectively sequestering single-use plastic by turning it into school furniture or whatever. And yet I know that hotels are doing that around the world, working with local social enterprises. It's those examples, I think, which are the great stories of what travel and tourism can create by working with communities and generating additional income streams and cleaning up the environment at the same time.
One of the things that we've done is this concept, and you're right, but I do think, honestly, Harold, that many of our hotels are really struggling to find even staff.
No, sure, I realize.
So it's not an excuse, and it's not to say that sustainability isn't happening anymore, but I think just to find the time to then apply for awards is maybe not what the hotels can do. But what I wanted to say is, and that was, we need to pick it up again because it was BC before COVID. But one of our hotels in Africa, in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, when we were talking about single-use plastics and when we announced our plan, we put a program in place with them, with a local, also a social enterprise, who is actually doing what the Plastic Bank is also doing, is paying people to collect the same amount of plastic from the environment as the hotel was actually using in a year, recognizing that we cannot move away from plastic bottles at this time. But what we can do is at least committing to remove the same amount of plastic from the environment as the one we are actually consuming in the hotel, and knowing that in the hotel we find partners who will also recycle it, as you say, and use the plastic to be treated into bricks, for example, or processed into something. And that's, I have to admit, I haven't looked at whether they are still doing it or whether if it is surviving that kind of idea. But those ideas are the ones that can also work in any environment. So
absolutely, Inge, I completely understand about how difficult it is to complete the applications. I know most people tell me it's 2 days work, and I completely understand that, and I take my hat off to the people who do it. But just bear in mind that it doesn't take 2 days of work to get onto the platform for change, and having those examples on there is also important because that's where they'll be shared from. Inge, as we come to the end of this, can I you've said a lot that's quite cheered me up, but perhaps a kind of final question for me as we come to the end of this. As you look forward into 2022, what do you think are the developments that are underway and we can look forward to? I don't wish you to be indiscreet about the future, but a few hints would perhaps raise everybody's mood.
Well, I think we are definitely more positive about 2022. I think we're prudently optimistic still about a full recovery in 2022. I think that's more for 2023.
Yeah.
We learn to live with the uncertainty, but we are much more optimistic about 22 than 21. And 21 is already better than 20, so that's really good. And I think that's also in terms of what's coming down the road for Radisson, for example, is we're working on our science-based targets. We will publish them, and that will get us started on the very, very ambitious targets we need to meet to go to net zero by 2050 and then meet our intermediate targets in 2030. So for us, that's that. And the other thing is really, and I would love to come back on the platform to tell everybody about it and to tell everybody about how they can get engaged, is about notably this entry level of hotel sustainability. We're trying to mobilize non-competitively a lot of hotel groups behind this, and also reach out to the main institutions and also to the distribution parties, the main distribution companies, so that we can get one common understanding of that starting point that is solid, accessible and reliable, so no greenwashing, part with measurements, etc., etc. And I hope to be able, I can't reveal it now, but I hope to be able to come back when I can talk about it in more specifics, and we can really create this movement that we need and the acceleration that we need globally.
Inge, can I just push you just very slightly? I don't want to push you into being indiscreet, but is this going to reach some of those places where people say nothing is happening? I think of China, for example, where I know, because I've recently been asked to form an ICRT in China, and we're working with the Green Foundation, that a lot more is going on than I had understood was going on in China. Do you think this new program of yours will reach some of those theoretically hard to reach places like China?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yes, I confirm that in a big way even. And I think it's, you know, we have to recognize that in any place, the tourism industry is an industry almost at two speeds. You know we need to get to net zero. We're talking about methodologies for that. We're implementing these methodologies, but we also need to think about the SMEs, and the SMEs have had a very, very rough time. And even in companies, like, we are a global brand, we're a global operator, but we work with a lot of SMEs. We work with a lot of SMEs, for example, in Africa, for example, in Asia Pacific, or even in the US, where it's family owned, single properties. So we connect to those SMEs, and we have the responsibility to also offer solutions that they can implement and that are relevant for them. And that's anywhere around the globe, but it will, and I confirm that, also reach the places that are considered harder to get engaged on the sustainability topic.
It does seem, doesn't it, a final comment from me, which you may want to respond to. It does seem that COVID it's been awful. Let's not take away from that. And I obviously wish it hadn't happened. But on the other hand, it does seem to have been quite a catalyst for change, doesn't it? Businesses have rethought the way they operate. They've understood the importance of their staff, perhaps in slightly different ways. They've seen the importance and the opportunity to respond to a big threat, which is what COVID is. And maybe some of the lessons learned from that are what's driving what seems to me to be a little bit of acceleration, possibly quite a lot of acceleration, in dealing with the sustainability challenges. Or am I just being naive and optimistic?
Yeah, I love this cartoon that I've seen, and I may have said it before, is that you have the first wave of COVID, the second wave of COVID, you see the third wave of COVID in a cartoon, and then you see this huge tsunami behind the person, and that's climate change.
Yeah.
So that's not the fourth wave. The fourth wave, the big thing, is climate change. But I think the other thing that we have a responsibility to do is, yes, we know we can respond, and yes, we know we can do that, caring for people and still be around after this horrible thing that in 1 year even, wiped out more than 70% of our business in tourism and travel. Yes, we can do that. Yes, we can respond. But we need to bring that ultimate timeline of 2050 to the first important milestone, which is 2030, which means we need to act now. We need to bring everybody along. And that, I think, is the thing we need to do for climate change and for sustainability, because that was the thing that made us act for COVID. Yes. And that's the thing that maybe I want to say as a final thing is, really, climate change is about now. It's about getting started, getting serious, and bringing in, of course, the whole sustainability agenda into action now and bringing everybody along. And then we can be very optimistic about what we are going to do and drive forward in 2022.
Inge, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. You always cheer me up about the potential for positive change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Harold.